It's recording, okay?
There we go.
Yes. Or transcription. Yeah, it's recording now.
Okay, good.
I can
Now,
start.
yeah, now we can start.
Did I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
No one else? Yeah, okay. So I did about Syria. And of course, the three countries that were requested to do. And each one of them, I kind of like, there's a uh, overriding sort of theme to their relationship. Algeria, like constantly friends. Egypt, kind of like a bad toxic relationship, and then Iran, frenemies.
Mm.
Okay, yeah. So with
We're talking about
Algeria,
Syria, right?
huh? This is
Syria, right?
Syria. Yeah,
Yeah.
Syria and Algeria, they have been really good friends. They kind of, both of them were under French colonialism. In Syria, for example, between 1950s and 1960s, after they got their liberation before the Algerians. So in 50s and 60s, they supported Algeria and their fight against, like, the National Liberation Front, their fight against French. When they gained the independency, both of them became good allies. They both recognized each other. They supported each other really well. Um, During Cold War, they were both in non-alignment movement, and they were also both part of the Arab League and sort of this Arab nationalism, Third World Union together. Um, so they were good friends in that sense. Both of them supported the Palestinian cause, and they do until today. Both of them have quite a strong hostility against Israel historically in their relationship, and both of them are also kind of against the radical Muslim groups. So both countries have those common enemies. Um, they also share a strong commitment to sort of West Saharan uh, case against against the Moroccans. Both of them support the Polisario. Syria keeps that support, and sort of one of the reasons they support Polisario is because of Algeria, because they're not. Algeria is a better ally to them than Morocco, which is kind of close to the West and close to the Israelis too now.
Mm.
In the Gulf War, for example, both of them stood against the war on Iraq, and both of them supported the Iraqis during the United Nations sanctions on Iraq. One time that they kind of differed on something, one historical thing they differed on something was during the Iraq-Iran war, where Syria aligned itself with Iran and secretly supported them, but Algeria was more towards Iraq in a way, or it kind of decided to not. It was against Iran, of course, but it decided to not support them, of course. In recent years, Algeria has been one of the few Arab countries that has maintained diplomatic relations with Syrian government, and it has constantly advocated for the Syrians to come into sort of, it has pushed other Arab countries to accept Syria back into the Arab League, like the regime representation, and to take their embassies to Damascus. And it's one of the few countries that still has its embassy in Damascus, and it has been pushing other Arab countries, and certainly worked with Emirates now that has opened, and some other countries, and now uh, other countries also are coming into line to sort of bring Syria back to the Arab League. And in the civil war also, it constantly supported the integrity and sovereignty of Syria and stood against Turkey and Saudis and others that were,
So, in
and
other words, you're
Israelis
saying they supported Assad.
in some ways, or the
Okay.
Syrian government. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, with Egypt, they have a very complicated relationship. They were both after independency, sort of led by those very nationalist groups, as we sort of saw in the documentary in between 1960 and 1958. The two countries formed the United Arab Republic under the leadership of Gamal Abdel Nasser. You know, that big union they had, but then the Egyptians were kind of seeing themselves more superior, and they were kind of taking over Syria. So it dissolved in 1960 because Syria didn't like it anymore. But they both continued to work together because both
No,
of
I want
them.
you to emphasize that part of the Egyptian and Syrian union. What there was a lot of factors in it that I think you need to unpack a little more.
In what sense? Oh yeah, I mean both of them kind of united in this pan-Arabian union and trying to get all the Arabs together, and everybody got really excited about this, and even the Lebanese and others were crazy celebrating it. It was kind of against the Israelis. Um, but the Syrians felt they were more of annexed than kind of united with the Egyptians, especially in the documentary. I liked how they emphasized on this sort of class element of this, because the Jamal Abdel Nasser was kind of nationalizing everything and supporting the peasants and stuff, but the bourgeois class in Damascus was very powerful, and they were like, this guy is actually now dangerous, and we do not want him to take our properties and stuff away from us too. That element and other factors got in, and they were like, no, enough for this, so they divided themselves. They continued to work together. 1973 war and 1967 wars, they did it together against against the Israelis. They both supported PLO. But in 1973, or in no, sorry, yeah, in 1979, Syria felt, after the Sadat agreement with Israel, they felt sort of betrayed, because in the war, Israelis were so powerful in 1973. They took both Sinai region from Egypt, and they took Golan from the Syrians. But now Egyptians, without the Syrians backing, like they backstabbed them, they did the agreement, they took Sinai back. But until today, Golan is occupied by Israel. So Syria was like, God damn, those guys sort of played us, and they still, that brought them into tension together. That brought even more tension because Egypt aligned itself with US and Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war, kind of, and Syria supported the Iranians. So Syria kind of started playing out of this pan-Arabism and playing with better allies that would do things for her better, kind of, I mean, support them more. Uh, However, in the Arab Spring era, it's been interesting because, in the few years that Morsi led Syria, they supported Morsi led Egypt because he's at this Muslim Brotherhood. He supported the radicals and stuff in Syria. But then after Sisi came, he's like, no, those guys, we don't want those, those rebellions and ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra and those also democratic ones. We don't like those guys. So they started slowly shifting their focus more towards stability than freedom and democracy and stuff. And in 2015, for example, Egypt supported a Russian resolution in UN security that actually asked for military interventions and stuff to get out of Syria, and was against the opposition kind of Islamic groups and stuff. So Egypt has been, and now it has started restoring diplomatic relationships with Syrian regime. Last one, Iran. I will take this short because I know I took a lot of time. Iran, they did not have very good relationships before 1979 because Iran's Shah was really close to Israel and stuff. But after 1979, both of them had a common enemy with the Islamic Revolution in Iran and the Bashar in Syria. They both had an enemy because Bashar wanted to be, not Bashar, sorry, Hafid Assad, Bashar's father, wanted to be the head of sort of Arab socialism, which was kind of contested by Saddam, who he wanted to be the head of Arab socialism, which both of them were from the same party, Ba'ath Party, but they were called Ba'ath Party in Arabic. They called them Qutr al-Iraq and Qutr al-Syria, meaning that the section of Syria and section of Iraq. They contested, so Syria was like, if we support Iran, then Saddam will be weakened, and that makes us the more powerful one. So they supported Iranians actually. But then 1991 comes, and then it becomes interesting. There's still strong relationship with Iran, but both of them decide to not stand against Iraq, and they stand against United States, and they support Iraq in that embargo and stuff.
They stand
Since
against the United States
Yeah, of course, yep.
after 2003.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then in 2000 they began even strengthening those relationships. They did some defense agreements together. Iran started supporting military to Syria, and Syria allowed them to use their land to strengthen Hezbollah against the Israelis. After 2011, it's kind of, if it wasn't to Iran and its allies in the region, Bashar Assad would have fallen 100%. They started sending thousands of militias, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, militias from Iraq, and Hezbollah from Syria, from Lebanon. All of them got involved, and it turned into this sectarian war. And Iran sort of allowed Bashar to survive, but he doesn't actually like them too much because he's a nationalist, he's secular, and those guys are coming. He sees them kind of problematic too. That's why he's playing so many games against them too by helping the Russians to have more influence than them because Russians
Than
are
the
more
Iranian. You
efficient
mean
than
the
them.
Iranian? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a marriage of convenience than real allyship. They're just like both have a lot of interest together, but at the same time, Iran is winning more from the relationship. But now Syria is trying to strengthen um Russia to balance their power out.
All right. Good.
Yeah. Yep.
Who wants
That's
to go
kind of
next? Joel, are you ready? Is Joel there?
Yeah, I can talk it. I can
Yeah,
talk.
yeah. It'd be nice if we see your face if you can.
Yeah, I have to save a little bit battery actually. That's why it takes too much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
but
go ahead without the video then.
yeah, so basically in my first paper I made like focused more on Egypt than on Algeria actually because I I saw in like my research that Iran and Algeria they have like not really bad relationships. So Algeria is also one of the few Sunni states in the region who also supports Iran. But since they try to be neutral because of Saudi Arabia, and most UN elections, or when it is about Iran or something like that, they are more like neutral and just go or something like this. So like Iran and Algeria is not super important, but it's kind of like they have like more like a friendly relationship, but no like they are not really have like situations where they're acting a lot together. And Egypt and Iran, this relationship is actually really interesting because I see like they develop in a total opposite way because under Nasser, Iran and Egypt didn't like each other because the Egyptian revolution was in 1952, and then the coup d'état in Iran was in 1953, so 1 year later. And this coup d'état was backed by the US. So that was something I mentioned in the presentations before. And so since that was backed by the US, the Shah, which was like put into power from the US, was more like friendly to the US. So Nasser didn't like that. So both countries had not really good relationships. And then under the death of Nasser in 1917, the the Shah and the president, the new president, I think his name was Anwar Sadat or something.
Mhm.
They had they had better relations, but then until the Iranian Revolution in 1979, so just a couple years later, the relations went back to bad because now Egypt was more friendly to the US and Israel, and Iran shifted back to being not friendly to Israel and Iran and Egypt. So both countries made had like this back and forth kind of like I feel like they always switch, but in the direct opposite way. So they never were really friends. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. And nowadays, so in 2011, the first Egypt, I forgot his name, but the first Egyptian president made a first visit to Iran after the Iranian Revolution. So after like 30, 40 years.
That
So
was
that's pretty
Morsi, I
long.
think.
Yeah, Morsi should, yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
And then in 2012, the Iranian president went to Egypt. So that's kind of like that you can see that they moved to each other. So they're kind of like getting closer to each other, but not really. So it's like, yeah. So it's kind of interesting what comes in the future. And in 2022, also the Egypt became an observer of the Shanghai Cooperation, which is kind of like they mostly like when they joined the Shanghai Cooperation, most states try to cooperate with Iran more. So, and that also brings me to my next topic of the my response paper. And in my response paper, I focused also on the Shanghai Cooperation, in which the Iran may gets better relations with countries which who are like part of this organization. For example, like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. They tried like these Central Asian countries. They try to work better with Iran more together. Also, India agreed with Iran about the Afghanistan situation, which kind of had issue, which like because of the Afghanistan situation, like India and Pakistan had like bad relations, and also Iran was conflicted into that. And Pakistan is also willing to debate more about the situation in Afghanistan, which is really like that's really good because these kind of countries were more like against each other, and now you can see like they try to make more diplomatic moves.
Hmm.
And also something interesting is that Iran, since it's now an official part, also since 2022, it's now an official part of the Shanghai Cooperation. It's also working together with Belarus and Russia and China.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it's working more together. And the Belarus, actually, the president of Lukashenko, he also said that they want more to exchange knowledge and industry between each other. So we can see that Iran definitely tries to make new partners. And that's like kind of the lower part of my response paper. And I start with so my thesis is Iran and its movement to fit into a unipolar world, which changes to a multipolar world order. And my idea is that they are more than just the US, so big powers in the world like China and Russia. And these powers are right now a little bit changing. And since like the Shanghai Cooperation and other diplomatic institutions try to emerge right now, and more like Iran gets the opportunity because of this multipolar world like really changing. The US is not anymore the most important part, and because of that the Iran gets like a new opportunity to like cooperate and integrate in different areas of the world and have a good trade with them and like maybe develop better. And Iran is definitely trying to do that. I mean, it's very new, so you can't see if it's really happening, but yeah. And I think the most important part why Iran is doing that is because Iran, I, I feel like they tried after the 2000s and something, they try to work with the West better and like with the European Union and the US. But that's also why they did like the nuclear deal, in my opinion. That's why they signed it. But and like multiple people like the Pope, multiple governments around the world, like everyone said that's a great deal except for Israel and Saudi Arabia. And when that happened, I feel like the US made this deal, agreed also to this deal because they had so much trade with Europe, and that's super important for them. But now it's changing back to like because under Donald Trump, the Israel and Saudi Arabia would be like were a lot more important because they like buy a lot of weapons, and because of that, I think Trump left the agreement. Like withdraw from it, because like, I mean, if your new friends are like against it, you have to follow with them and to like catch up with their trade and like get these opportunities. And so after this, like, the US basically had really bad relations with Iran, and that would never went up. And Europe still tries to hold with the agreement, but it's kind of hard because Iran also cheats a little bit. So like, Trump was right, but in my opinion, it's better for the US, for the economy, and also for the relations in the world, to have like these kind of still these agreements, even though they cheat and they made like not everything right. But it's still better to have diplomatic relations than like completely withdraw and like yeah, leave them alone, because with that, Iran is now turning around and tries to go more to the eastern side, like China, Russia, and all these countries. And I think they are doing this really good. And yeah, it could be maybe that they like. I think the US is definitely losing influence and relevance in this region of the world. Like, they are just like, they shoot themselves out of the game, kind of, in my opinion. And so now China is stepping into this footprints, and I think Iran is trying to fit into this whole situation and try maybe to develop more trade, because like, when we saw in earlier presentations, Iran has not a lot of trade with other countries, especially compared to their GPA, and also their trade is really bad because they only trade materials, raw materials, and iron, and gas, oil, copper, like, just like uh, the stuff which is not super valuable. And compared that to what they could do when they, for example, trade with Belarus, they could like trade the knowledge, like the valuable stuff, and like also machines, and yeah, like the stuff what they already developed, but they can't trade it because they have no partners. And I think they're trying to do something like that, and yeah, they're in a good way, in my opinion.
Hmm. That's really good because Delilah is doing a paper about kind of related in one way or the other, but using Turkey. But it's interesting that you guys are coming to almost the same conclusion, right? Don't you think, Delilah? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm really happy that we are writing those things because I feel like I like what Joel is doing there because I feel like the international system has changed so radically, but still much of academia is kind of in the Cold War era. So it's
Yeah.
good that we youngies are coming in and saying, no, you just things are changing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like what Joel is doing. Yeah. I
Because
think it's
we
in
went. We
line with
went.
what I'm doing.
I think
Yeah.
also like the most important part when we talk about this is that like most countries, or like most intellectuals, focus on like the western part because they are from there. So they are like from the US and stuff. So you focus on that region. But I feel like that's why, like, when you are not from, like, for example, China or Iran, it's hard to understand from like an outside position. And like, just to connect that, I think like most that's why like most intellectuals are just like trying really hard to understand it, but like make conclusions that wouldn't help the situation. And yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, that's also a very German view, but I think the diplomacy, like diplomatic relations and stuff like that, is always more important than like just withdrawing and like show them like with power politics or something. That's not going to like work with countries like Iran or China. You have to like be the soft way, or like Russia as well. Like, you have to show them like a soft way, and then make them try to convince them with your ideas, kind of that stuff.
Hmm. I agree
Yeah.
because we went to a talk. Delilah and I were invited by Robert Daly to a talk of some guy who works for the
Foreign
he,
service.
yeah, he worked for the Foreign Service, was in Desert Storm, and he did a lot of for foreign intelligence work. So State Department is where it's from, right? It's from the State Department, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, he was
Yeah,
from the State Department. Yeah.
yeah, like for 30 years or so. So he came to give a lecture in Boise, and he was talking about how the United States in general has no interest in understanding the nuances of Iran, and that it is a powerful actor that has imperial ambitions, and that it also has a lot of state capacity and cultural relevance that is so hard to wash away.
Mhm.
So and because of that, when we talk about Iran, we shouldn't be thinking about Tehran only as the end point of the country, that it spreads. It's sort of like,
Mhm.
when you think about
It's
the West, you think about United States, but it's really not the United States. The West is broader. Nobody knows where the border is, but we know that it is broader, right? And uh, Iran is the same way. Areas of the world that it had influence still have um, loyalty to Tehran.
it's like this
And
is the thing. It's like there is this. It's just such a silly mindset. This idea of like pariah states, and I don't know what the hell. It's like if Iran wants to be a pariah, illegal sort of this bad guy in the system, then tomorrow Iran with its military like just rocket capacity, it can destroy every US ally capital in the Middle East. Literally, like those guys are like they're so undermined the power they have. Like they have military paramilitaries in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen. They have rockets that can reach Europe. They literally have missiles that can reach Europe. They have some of the most advanced drones now in the world. They are a power. They're literally Russia. We say Russia is a threat, but Russia is getting weapons from Iran now. Iran is militarizing it. So yeah, those guys have to be taken really seriously. It's not a joke anymore. And
yeah,
I like what Joel is saying there.
let's
Yeah,
hear from our friend and then come back to this conversation. Dila,
yeah.
Isham is gonna tell us what the Algerians got. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So first, I do want to get out the way, just as Joel said, Algeria and Iran have a somewhat uniquely friendly relationship. As he said, Sunni majority country versus a Shia majority country. Usually, as we can see in other spaces, that's not going to work out. But it does work out with Algeria and Iran, almost to the degree because they don't have too much in common. I will also point out, however, that Algeria has no official stance on the Irani-Saudi conflict. As you'll see, as a kind of a common trope with Algeria, they don't have official stance on a lot of issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Are they the Switzerland of the Middle East area?
yeah, kind of. Honestly, they in most situations they will purposely leave UN votes. They will purposely make no comments towards what's going on, even in the Ukrainian conflict right now, which I find interesting because I think most of the world, even most of the world condemns Russia for what it's doing, and even Russia's allies like China and India aren't condemning it, but they are just not saying anything to it. So I think that it's interesting that Algeria is joining that not saying anything group.
Their diplomat disappeared, went to the bathroom when the vote was being counted.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the Algeria and Iran, like I said, uniquely friendly, but not much going to it. So the main thing that I wanted to
But I
focus
gotta
on.
ask you though, do they trade with each other?
Let me double check. Let's see. My primary sources that I used were Wikipedia and the book. And the book the book doesn't have much. First of all, the book on Algeria's international and regional politics is literally 2 pages. Any discussion of Algerian Iranian relations, I haven't seen much on. So I don't know about what their trade is like. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Not to cut you. I know that before the the deal that Obama broke with the U.S. like the Iranians about the nuclear deterrence and stuff, Algeria was trading with Iran back then. But I don't know after the second time that Trump opposed the second time that they opposed sanctions on them. I don't know about that. But before 2016, they were trading in a low volume since Algeria only exports oil, but they were trading.
Oh, actually, I did forget one point. During the Algerian Civil War, there were a few nations like Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Sudan, and Libya, and Iran that Algeria accused them of supporting more hardcore armed Islamic groups, specifically the Armed Islamic Group of Algeria. They accused these other countries of supporting that group. Iran was even specifically found to have used Sudan as a transport in supporting rebels and to Algeria. So that's pretty much everything with Algeria and Iran.
That's a good one.
Jacob's pouring them out quick.
I love the way because it's actually accurate when it comes to Algeria. Okay. What about Iran? What about Egypt? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So now Algeria and Egypt, much more interesting. Algeria and Egypt are separated pretty much by just Libya. Tunisia is up there, but Tunisia is only in between Algeria and Libya. So being a lot closer, they're going to have a lot more interest with each other. First off, Algeria and Egypt's relationship, starting from the Algerian Revolution, was very positive. Egypt was a huge supporter, specifically, of course, Nasser was a huge supporter of the FLN and Algeria's liberation movement, to the point of even like sending military support. It was actually also a part of that. Part of Egypt's support of Algeria caused France to side with Britain over the Suez Canal conflict, the Suez crisis.
So it's the support for Egyptian support for Algerian liberation fighters that that allowed push France to support the British over the Suez Canal.
Yes, exactly. Even to the point where the U.S. President Eisenhower at the time, and this is a quote, said the French would rather fight at the center of Egypt, the center of the trouble in Egypt, rather than the periphery of difficulty. He's talking about Algeria. He was basically calling France cowards for going and fighting this proxy war while they were also supposed to be fighting Algeria. Which that was just interesting that even Eisenhower was calling them out for that. So yes, relationships were very positive, especially when Nasser was still alive. They stayed positive after Algeria gained full independence, to the point even that like Algeria had a state crush on Nasser, where they really wanted him to be the first foreign like head of state to visit Algeria once they gained full independence, and he was going to be, except that Morocco's King Hassan II accepted the invitation earlier and showed up just like a day earlier or something to the like. And speaking of Morocco, Algeria was supported by Egypt during the Sand War, which was that war between Algeria and Morocco that happened in the, when was that again? I want to say it's 60s or something, where Morocco tried to claim some land down in the Sahara. So then fast forward to 1967 to the 6-Day War, when Egypt and Israel, of course, had their famous war. Algeria, of course, was right there on the side with Egypt, supporting them. One funny story that I found was that they were sending them aircrafts. Specifically after the whole bombing situation, Algeria wanted to send them aircrafts, and but because the war was short, by the time they even reached Egypt, the war was over.
By the time the aircraft reached Egypt?
Yeah, by the time that the aircraft that Algeria was sending Egypt to make up for everything that happened reached Egypt, the war was over.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I think Chambers got it wrong this time. No, you go ahead. He's on the chat.
It's actually the opposite. Yeah, it's
the
the opposite there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then relationships actually hit a low point after Egypt signs the peace treaty with Israel, because Algeria, on the other hand, along with a few other nations, were like, "Why are you giving up right now? You shouldn't have done that." And following the Camp David Accords, when Egypt was expelled from the Arab League, Algeria was one of the big proponents of doing that. Tensions remained high between Egypt and Algeria until November 1988, when Algeria decided to reestablish relations. Currently, it's the relationship between Algeria and Egypt is pretty positive. Nothing really notable that I've read as far as history goes. One thing that the book mentions, and I'll definitely mention later, is that post 9/11 in the U.S., Algeria became a large, I specifically say ally with the U.S. in trying to stop Islamic extremism, because as much as Algeria agreed we need to stop Islamic extremism, the U.S. doesn't really trust Algeria. So Algeria has been doing a lot of fighting of Islamic extremism, especially towards Libya, which is a huge hotspot as far as black market arms dealing. And so the reason that I mentioned that, is to say that Egypt and Algeria have been sort of coordinating their efforts on stopping that black market for the Islamic extremists in Libya.
Okay.
And so, as a part of the positive ties and the close proximity of Algeria and Egypt, there's a lot of good economic and business going on there. Let's see if there's any. There's nothing really that stood out to me as far as that, but yes, there's good economic ties.
I think they do have something. I gotta say, they have this cultural rivalry. So the cultural rivalry is usually on sports and culture, like popular culture.
Yes. Wait. I was about to say the next thing that I want to talk about is the Algerian and Egyptian soccer rivalry.
Oh yes.
Yes. So Algeria and Egypt have had a rivalry going since 1989, when Egypt beat Algeria for the qualifying match for the 1990 World Cup. There wasn't any sort of rivalry until then, but it was this big one that a player at the time even said it was a battle, not a football match. Things got heated in the stands. Fans rioted. There was even a famous report of an Algerian player attacking an Egyptian fan, specifically Belouimi. My dad would kill me that I don't know this guy's name very well, but he's known as one of Algeria's best soccer players ever. He was convicted for attacking an Egyptian team doctor with glass and blinded him.
Oh, really?
Yes, and he was convicted of that, but he was convicted in absentia, which means he was convicted even though he wasn't in court defending himself. So I don't know. I didn't read further into this situation. I don't know how true it is. But anyway, so this decisive match in 1989 started these tensions, right? And so we'll see going forward for the next like 20 or so years, every time that Algeria and Egypt face each other, things are very tense, right? Mostly, I should say things are very tense, but not at the level of the actual states, right? The both teams and their fans will accuse each other of underhanded tactics, of literal violence, but you'll notice in both situations that state representatives for both countries will downplay what's going on and try to mitigate so as to not create an actual conflict between the countries. Like you said, it's more of a cultural conflict.
Yeah, it's like Mexico and United States football game. So the Americans always make sure these games are played in the coldest places in the U.S. So
yes,
they can have a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all of this comes to a figurehead actually in 2009, 18th of November. This is the qualifying match for the 2010 World Cup. Algeria beats Egypt by a single point, and even the lead up to this was really intense. The Algerian team flew into Egypt and then was traveling by bus, of course. And there was a video evidence attack of what Algeria had. So both states agree it was just a group of hooligans that were throwing rocks at the bus, but it was to the point that several not team several of the Algerian soccer players were injured, even a sports official. Then there was a lot of claims that then Egypt claimed this was a hoax, but then there's video evidence that it occurred, and you can clearly see people being attacked, stuff like that. But then after that, like I said, the states kind of had to do work to prevent it from becoming an actual issue. There was a lot of claims back and forth between fans and even some soccer players, but at the end of the day, both states really incentivized their teams to not make this an actual issue.
Yeah, so the fact that there exists some kind of a tension in culture makes sometimes, like for example, the United States and Iran, even when it's an Olympic context, maybe a boxing game, wrestling game, soccer game, so much tension, and it's kind of like an outsourcing of the existing political differences into the sporting arena. But when it comes about Algeria and Egypt, it's more of like a sibling rivalry. There's really nothing to fight over, but we want to be the superior force here. At least in this matter. It's also in film and music as well. I think the Algerians are a little better when it comes to film, because the French do have.
Algerians cannot outcompete
Yeah.
the Egyptians in film industry. I don't think so.
Uh-huh.
Egyptians are way better.
You think so?
I will note how nothing. My family doesn't talk about Algerian films whatsoever.
Oh, they won't? They don't?
Yeah.
Egypt
Do they talk about Egyptian film?
Well, okay. To be fair, my family isn't too big on the arts, so I don't know.
No, but it's Egyptian ones. Egypt has like almost like a you know how Indians have Bollywood?
Mm.
Egypt cinema is huge since like the 60s, and they have those Adil Imam and all those big actors who are like crazy, funny and stuff. Yeah. So I don't know. I've never watched anything from Algeria.
It might seem in there that we're talking about this in a political economy class, but soft culture is so important in how a state is perceived.
No, I like in Iraq also. You watch in Iraq there in Middle East there are like 3 strong countries, actually 4, that in movies and stuff. Turkey is global right now. Iran is really powerful in movies.
I don't see their movies on Netflix.
No, because they wouldn't put them, of course. But Iranians have really good TV shows.
Yeah.
Egyptians and Syrians.
Syrians have a movie culture.
Oh, Syrians used to like dominate the region with their TV shows, all the Arab world. But the war kind of shaked it a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just generally, what we have 2 minutes left. What do you guys did you think about Iran? I think the documentary that I assigned is like 10 years old, but
did
nothing
Matthew
much.
do his though?
Yeah.
Did Matthew do his presentation?
Matthew already did.
Oh, okay.
Did you do it?
I haven't yet. You want me to blow through real fast, or you want to talk?
Oh
about
God.
Oh God, I forgot. I thought you did. That's why I was very wasteful with time. But you guys mind letting him go, since we were really wasteful on our time? I didn't keep track.
Yeah, if you guys don't, I'll run through this real fast. So I have.
No, you don't. Yeah, just take your time. I mean, if they have to leave, they have to leave. Yeah.
The good points. So again, just going through the 3 countries we wanted to explore. There's one that's a little bit more interesting than the other two that stands out. So we'll start with Egypt and Algeria. So
Yeah.
starting with Egypt, both Egypt and Iran were British protectorates after World War One. After they gained independence, they both maintained good relations. After the Iraqi monarchy was overthrown, the new Iraqi president was a little weary of Nasser's influence in the region. Kind of going back to, they're both, or we'll get to that. So a little weary of Nasser's influence, but even still, they maintained cordial relations through the Nasser period. Egypt and Iraq's ties really strengthened during the presidency of Saddam Hussein. Nasser had died, but Saddam had studied in Egypt in the 60s. And that pan-Arabism of the Nasser period was still really strong in Egypt. So that was kind of their common bond, was that pan-Arabism. Really, the only there had been some periods of diplomatic strain. Most notable was the fierce commendation of Egypt by Iraq alongside many other Arab countries when President Sadat made initiatives for peace with Israel. Relations also soured when Egypt aided the coalition effort to expel Iraq from Kuwait. But again, that was kind of broad throughout the entire Arab world. They're pretty isolated in that, so it wasn't unique. And then when the U.S.-led coalition invaded Iraq in 2003, relations between Egypt and Iraq were stifled by economic sanctions and the military presence. Though President Mubarak, am I pronouncing that anywhere close?
Mubarak, yeah.
Yeah, Mubarak opposed the U.S. intervention, and then publicly said that he thought it was a mistake that they ended up overthrowing and then eventually, putting Saddam to death. So today, Iraq and Egypt work closely to establish trade and improve Iraqi stability, and they both work in counter-terrorism joint operations in the region. Then Algeria, again, not too much here. They've maintained a stable, friendly relationship. Like Egypt and Iraq, governments found commonality in their pan-Arabism. Algeria and Iraq held shared anti-Western and pro-socialist sentiments through the late 20th century. That was kind of their common bond. Both states were Soviet allies, and upon the collapse of the USSR, found a receptive market for their hydrocarbons and crude oil in the West. Though after the 9/11 attacks, as Hashim talked about, Algeria became a strategic partner of the West, while Iraq became like its chief target. Today, weakened by Islamic insurgency in the country and discredited by numerous human rights violations, the Algerian regime is no longer really a major player on the international or regional level. And finally, we get to Iran. So by far the most complex of the three relations examined. Iran and Iraq have been historic rivals, and then, albeit from a complete list of the complex historical underpinnings of the conflict, just a couple of major things to point out. The first is sectarianism. So Iraq has, through the 20th century was ruled by a secular Sunni government. And then Iraq was obviously headed by clergy. And then borders. Iran and Iraq share a long and historically disputed border. And then, just the difference in government. And then prior to the 1979, the prior to 1979, Iraq and Iran's conflict was limited to limited border skirmishes, and then both sides supported Kurdish independence insurgencies in each other's respective countries. But the Iranian Revolution would fundamentally change the dynamics of the Gulf. Word that Khomeini would plan to export the revolution to Iraq. Saddam invaded Iran in 1980 under the pretext of a territorial dispute. But most people attribute it to he was worried that Iraq was going to export the revolution, which this week's reading kind of gave it, it's not an unfounded concern. Iraq's government at the time was Sunni, but they had a majority Shia population. So it does seem like it, you know, is a real possibility that could be a threat. But anyways, the Iran-Iraq war lasted 8 years and left 500,000 dead. Large-scale trench warfare and chemical attacks made the fighting reminiscent of World War I. And this was exaggerated by the Shia Islamic interpretations of martyrdom that, you know, I read that they would put like keys on Iranian children and then tell them this will get you into heaven. And then they would send them out into no man's land to clear the way for more experienced troops.
Oh, I saw that. I saw it was really crazy.
Yeah, really crazy and definitely devastating. And then
Yeah.
Iran ties seemed to stabilize after the war. There were successful prisoner of war transfers, things like that. Iran opposed the U.S. invasion in 2003, and then now the transitional government or permanent government, I don't know what state it's at now, is largely Shia, and today Iran and Iraq's relationship is really stable, and Iraq's largest and most dependable trading partner is actually Iran today. So interesting stuff.
They're trading more now.
I'm sorry?
You see, their largest trading partner is Iran right now.
Yep.
Wow, I did not know that. Huh?
Yeah, crazy how things change so fast. I don't know, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think, but I'd imagine it's because of I don't think something like this would have been possible unless Saddam was toppled and now it's a Shia government working with a Shia government. But I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like U.S. invasion, like gave Iraq in a plate of gold to Iran, because the new system they brought, the majority of the power is in the hand of the Shias, and they also the new army they created, the majority were Shias. So Iran just came in and brought their guys, all those guys in the sort of opposition of Saddam. Those were the guys that were sort of Khomeini was taking care of them in Tehran back in the day. Like right now, there is the second biggest party in Iraq, Shia party, is led by a guy that was, as a Shia militia, was fighting Iraq's army in the war with Iran. So those guys, after the war, they came and they ruled. So yeah, they
Crazy.
are the best allies. Even
And
like
I think,
yeah.
like just going back to, you know, like how we're talking about the unipolar moment might be over. It seems like, because I looked up the agreement that China just brokered between the Saudis and Iranians, and now you see that Iran and Iraq have these close ties. So it seems like the Gulf is becoming ever more stable, and it seems like China's taking full advantage. It seems like they might be forming like a coalition, a block out there of you know, friendly governments that are all orchestrating together and bringing stability. So I don't know. Curious what you guys think.
No, adding to that is like the agreement. People don't talk about this, but the Sunni and Shia parties in Iraq, each one of them are friends with the other side. They actually brought the Saudis and Iranians together in Baghdad last year, and they were like, and France was kind of involved. So many, they were like, come in, we are done with your conflict. Just come sit together. And so the Iraqis first brought them together, and then it was Oman, and then China. So that's been really interesting.
So you think that in this moment of crisis, the confidence on American leadership is weak in the region, and therefore China is exploiting that.
Yeah, and then when I was doing this research too, when we were talking about the Iranian nuclear physicist that was killed in Iraq, they actually the government met over that in Baghdad, and I forgot if it was the prime minister or the Ayatollah, but he said they killed your visitor in our house, or I'm sorry, the Iraqi said they killed your visitor in our house, and like that strike really strengthened ties too, because they're like, yeah, we, you know, diplomacy was already flourishing, and then we killed that that physicist in Baghdad. So it seems like I don't know, we're driving a wedge between.
I think you talked about that in one of the previous presentation on foreign policy, right? The murder of this general. But I hear the guy wasn't a real good guy, though. I mean, he had done a lot of bad stuff, but it doesn't mean that you take him out that way in another country.
They've got his car. He killed him, but they dropped the strike him. They have the car out as like a memorial. It's crazy. You can look it up.
Yeah, Chambers is telling us Jeb Bush is running again. Is he? I don't know about that. Or is it Jen Bush? I don't know. Anyway, we are out of time by 10 minutes. So I'm going to end the class.
His weak brother. His weak brother. George Bush's weak brother.
Oh, I can't
Trump obliterated him, man.
Oh, my God. Trump killed
One
him.
more time.
Huh?
No, it's going to be George W. Bush's son.
Oh, his name is Jen?
No, I was joking around. I was joking around that another Bush is going to come in there.
At this moment, anybody who is younger than 40, I'll vote for them.
Haley and Jeb Bush. That's going to be the
all right, guys. Thank you so much, man. I enjoyed this. I'm going to upload this so the other guys can have access to it. But really amazing presentations. All of them were good. So, okay. Enjoy your break, and I'll Monday I'm gonna do a recorded lecture because I'm enjoying home so much. I don't want to ruin it. You will have access to it, and then we will meet on Wednesday. Wednesday, not Wednesday after the break.
Is the response paper up on? Because I see the case studies up on Friday, but I don't see the response paper.
Oh, I already uploaded it. It should be due tonight. Have you worked on it? Let me see. Let me just check while we are at it, okay?
Because I see the case update, but not on Canvas, but not the response paper.
Oh, the response paper has been up for a while. Let me see assignments. I'm looking at it now. Response paper due 24th. Oh. Response 2, response 3. Yeah, it's up, Chambers. It was up for a while.
Oh, okay, I see it.
You see it?
Yeah, sorry, it didn't show up on my to-do list, so that's why I was like, oh. So,
it didn't. Okay, do you guys want more days for this, or you guys want to do it? How many of you started working on it?
Can we have one more day?
I can't technically make you work during a break. So if I push it, I'll have to be due after spring break. If you're fine with that, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
That's fine with you?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
But okay.
I can also upload it now. I'm done. I'm already done with that.
Okay, if you're done, send it in. If you're not done, I have you can send it when you're ready. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll give you a little more time if you enjoy yourself. But I want a good paper. If I give you more time, don't poop on the paper, okay? All right, guys. I'm going to update this and you'll see it soon, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Enjoy your break and have fun.
You too. Have fun with your family.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and watch the news. Hey, Jacob.
What's up, my guy?
Bye-bye. Have a good one.
You too, man. Have a good break.
See you.